Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Bright Reality Media interview. Today, we're speaking with Lisa Haydon, who I'm just meeting today for the first time. We've been Facebook friends for a while, and Lisa's in a phase of her life where she has some more freedom and time to pursue creative passions. And I'm really glad that she has decided to spend some of her free time talking about her relationship with Samraj. And she has been a devotee for a long time, since 1974. So I'm super excited to hear the stories that she has to share. Lisa, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Do you want to start off with a question?
Yeah. So I'm learning about you in real time as you are, folks watching this. Yeah, Lisa, you told me you were 19 years old when you came to Adida in 1974. What led up to that? What were you doing when you were 18, 19 years old?
I was in college and I was reading Dostoevsky. I read everything he wrote, and I was deeply embedded in trying to understand the meaning of life. I kept feeling like we live, we die. What is the point? Why are we here? And it was kind of an existential crisis for me. And so I was in this place of exploration. And in one of the books by Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov, there's a spiritual teacher in that book. And I had no experience with spiritual teachers. And I was fascinated with the guru-devotee relationship. This was a teacher in Russia, but he was definitely an empowered teacher. And I was moved by the devotion of the characters in the book. So I read this book and I was like, okay. But I was still just full of angst and great need. And all of a sudden, these phrases, these thoughts just started literally the way I felt it was. They were bubbling out of my heart and up into my head. And these thoughts would start coming, and they would be these beautiful phrases about the heart and about truth. And I was like, wow, I'm awesome. I have all these great thoughts. And then a friend of mine who was in college with me became a devotee of Adida Samraj, as did her sister. And so she brought me, at the time, there were only two books, The Knee of Listening and The Method of the Siddhas. And she brought me The Knee of Listening. And I started reading The Knee of Listening. And the phrases that had been coming to consciousness in my body mind were literally written there in the book. It was literally the same words in the book. And so I just felt like the guru had reached out and found me, and so I read that book, and I read the second book. And to be honest, the second book, The Method of the Siddhas, there's a chapter and there's a line where he says, the orgasm isn't necessary. And I was 19 and I was not ready to hear that kind of thing. And so I put the books away and I was like, no, I just, no, I don't want to change my life and yet. But the weeks passed and I thought, I know who he is. I know that he is my spiritual teacher and that he is enlightened. And I just felt like this was the answer to what I had been asking for in my life. And so I took the books back out, and then I just went through the process of approaching. A lot of devotees kind of went through things really quickly and had access to Bhagavan Adida really quickly. But for me, it took months of submitting my life, and being and showing that I was serious, and making changes in my life before that happened for me. So I had a lot of tests to start with.
That's a pretty major commitment to make when you're a teenager. But it seemed like you're, other than just, I guess, having some trepidation about certain disciplines. I mean, you seems like your response was pretty immediate.
It was over several months. There was a couple things that happened. One was, which seems ordinary, but it wasn't for me. My friend who had told me about the teaching was on a 10-day fast. And she had baked this banana bread for me as a gift, and she brought it over to my house while she was in the middle of a 10-day fast. And that seems really ordinary, but for me to see this person not eating for days on end and also baking dessert for me at the same time was like, okay, if she's capable of that, that's a big deal. And that might seem silly to people, but for me, it was like, this person's life has really come under submission to a greater cause than just her own personal life. The other thing that happened was, after one of the Guru Purnima celebration of that year, that was the celebration that the very first film, A Difficult Man, and there was a lot of film footage of that celebration. She came back from that celebration and she had brought me prasad, which is blessed gifts from the Guru. And she brought me this tray with an orange and some incense and the first Stone Horse magazine. And the transmission, Bhagavan Adida's presence and energy was so profound on that tray. And I brought it into my house, and it was like he walked in my house. And that was the biggest initiation point, was receiving him in those forms from Guru Purnima.
And what did your first experience of that kind of transmission, what did that feel like to you?
It felt like all of my questions and all of my dilemma were simply like love embraced me and said, just let me take those from you. You don't need them. I can carry them. I know you can't carry them. Let me just take those for you. And then let me just leave you with this feeling of there is no problem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of how I felt about that first transmission experience.
And you had not seen Haridhar, I guess he was called Bubba then.
Bubba Free John. No, it was about 3 months. It was it was about 3 months before. Well, actually, wow, that's not true. After Guru Purnima, I didn't see him till, I believe it was the April. So no, I'm confused. Maybe it was a September celebration.
Within a year.
Yeah, it was September, I think, of that year. And I was told that he may not show up for, it was a celebration. We were told, well, he might not come to anything. So, come to the Mountain of Attention Sanctuary and enjoy the celebration, be in the asana, or the spiritual posture of surrender and giving of yourself, not looking for attention, but of offering your attention, and we'll just see what happens. And so I did, and I saw Bhagavan probably, well, first he gave darshan, then he came to lunch with us, then he came to a musical offering with us, And then we used to have a swimming pool at the Mountain of Attention. It was this gigantic swimming pool. And then he went swimming with us. And we all ended up in the pool together, just embracing him and being in darshan with him in the swimming pool. So yeah, so my first day of actually sighting his bodily human form was utterly magnificent.
How did that compare being around the guru in person with your experience of feeling that transmission from the gifts that were brought back?
Um, mm, wow, I can't say it was this. I mean, it was the same one. It was the same presence. But of course, in his bodily company, everything is magnified. And that's actually a really good point, because that love bliss is magnified, but also whatever subjectivity I had was magnified. And so my self-consciousness, my fear, my lack of trust, all that was magnified too. And so yeah, it was everything was there to be felt and surrendered and also received. Oh.
So this was just like one day and then you left, or what was the circumstance like?
I think it was a weekend. I think we would come up there for the weekend. I lived in San Francisco, so we would then, the routine was you would come to the sanctuary every weekend and participate in service. I was pretty quickly asked to serve Bhagavan's residents, and I would go there in the morning and clean, and sometimes I'd help make his meal, and so yeah, so but you know, sometimes I would just be raking outside, raking leaves, or you know, sweeping porches or cleaning toilets. I think the first thing I ever did was clean toilets. And then in the summer I would work we had gardens, and I'd work in the gardens, and yeah, I did everything.
Yeah, I mean that description definitely sounds like a lot of people might associate it with, you know, going to a Buddhist monastery and a thing of monks sweeping the floor, or what's that aphorism about, you know, before enlightenment, sweep the floor, fetch the water. After enlightenment, sweep the floor, fetch the water. I'm butchering it, I know, but did it seem like that was the natural thing to do? You weren't like, I'm here to see the spiritual teacher and here I am raking.
Yeah, you know, we go through a lot of education. A big part of being a practitioner of Adidam is education and studying what the way of the heart is really about. And granted, those first many years that I was involved were a grand experiment. Bhagavan was forming his dharma, forming the practice, and kind of experimenting with different practices. But the main teaching was always the same, and we were always imbued with that. And every time he would give a discourse, which was almost every weekend, it was the same message: self-forgetting, guru contemplation. Stay in the room with me, and I will shine upon you. I will give you everything you need. All you need to do is give me your attention. Mm. And so service was a way of meditating on the guru with one's whole body. And so service was super important, and it felt super, you know, as a well, even now, but as a young devotee, it's like, what can I really give? I can give my attention, I can give my heart, I can give my body in service. So I was super happy to do that. And it was interesting. I remember one day I was sweeping, and I was sweeping outside, and I remember thinking, I was kind of bored, and I was like, I wish this would be over already. And this thought came into my mind: why don't you contemplate the guru while you're sweeping? And I thought to myself, oh, of course, that's what I should be doing. And 2 seconds later, Bhagavan Ida walks out of his residence, and he walks right by me. And I realized that that was not my thought. That was Bhagavan's thought being communicated to me, like, hey, you know, do what you're supposed to be doing here as a devotee. And um, so yeah, simple bodily service is a great opportunity to have free attention, to contemplate the guru, contemplate his bodily human form, his spiritual and all-pervading presence, and his very and inherently perfect state. And so if I find now that if I'm bored, that happened today. I was a little bored, and I thought, what is boredom? Boredom is lack of turning my attention to the guru. Is a perfect opportunity. So I'm kind of grateful to not be so busy anymore, because I do have more opportunity to turn my attention. And that might not be too dharmically correct. I think Bhagavan would probably say, you can turn your attention to me always. But anyway.
I think I read somewhere Adidas said that boredom is emotional detachment.
Exactly. But the opposite of boredom isn't being busy either. The opposite of boredom is, what am I doing with my attention? And so, yeah, the opposite of boredom for me is turning the faculties to the guru. And so,
when
yeah.
when you're still 19, 20 years old, in the mid 70s, was this the time you mentioned Adida um, was going through periods of experimentation and the formulating the teaching, in relationship with the people who came to him? Was this during, a lot of people are familiar with the Garbage and the Goddess era? Was this during that time?
Garbage and the Goddess pretty much ended when I came. It was that Guru Day that I was talking about. It was like, well, it kind of went into the tail end of that year. And so there was a little bit of that when I came. But Indoor Summer was another period of time that I was really involved with. And that was after Garbage and the Goddess. And that was when Adida pretty much spent a whole summer inside his residence with devotees in a great consideration. And out of that time came the men and women's culture, devotional groups. He created a huge part of how we relate to each other and how we relate to him. I have a beautiful story about that time. It's one of the stories that has affected me my entire life.
It would be an honor to hear it.
Thank you. One thing I want to say too, I was thinking about this morning, how these sacred stories or leelas, they never stop going on. Like, they're always eternally happening. Whenever I contemplate any story of my relationship to Bhagavan Adida, whether it's mine or somebody else's, I feel it in that moment. I literally feel that it is going on in that moment. So I can understand it, why Bhagavan says telling leelas is so important, because it literally awakens his work as was happening in that leela in the present. So I was thinking about a couple of really important leelas in my own life and feeling so grateful, because I was like, oh, I can feel it right now. I can feel the exact thing right now. So this was during Indoor Summer, and I had I had a deep love relationship to Bhagavan Adida, and I felt him as the divine person in his bodily human form, but I hadn't really felt him as beyond the body. I mean, like when I was talking to you about that prasad that my friend brought me, that was about energy. That was about divine energy. But to feel Adida as who he is beyond the body, I hadn't really, a lot of us hadn't really felt that. It wasn't part of the teaching at that time too much. And so Indoor Summer really kind of instigated, sorry, the sun, I can't do anything about the sun shining on me.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
So during Indoor Summer, much of the time he would separate the men and the women, and the men would be in one room and the women would be in another. And he would go talk with the men. He would talk the Dharma with the men. And this is the way the men fell in love with the divine person, was through consideration. And then he would come spend time with the women. And the women was more about just heart response to him, not a lot of talk. And so we were in one room with him, a group of women, and he was talking a little bit and just kind of, being playful. And he said, I want everyone to lie down on the floor. Everyone just lie down. And so we all lay down, and he motioned to me, and he was sitting in a chair with his feet on the ground, and he motioned to me and he said, come over here and lie down at my feet. And thinking about this now, I wasn't really able to receive what was going on back then. But like I said, the Leela goes on forever. And so every time I think about it, I'm more able to receive it now and feel so deeply grateful now. Anyway, he asked me to come lie at his feet, and I did. And he put his feet on my forehead. He put both his feet on my forehead. And then he started talking with us, and he said, I want you all to relax your body, let go. And he said, I want you to feel me beyond the body. Feel me as spiritual presence. I'm not limited to this body. So feel me as spiritual presence beyond the body. And that was the first time. It was like an initiation, especially with his feet on my forehead, that I literally felt then I was able to feel his spiritual presence. And my relationship to him then became something that wasn't as dependent on his bodily human form as it was at first. And it was the first step in being able to actually practice the way of the heart for real, because I could give him turn the faculties to him and connect with him anywhere, not just when I was in his personal company. So that's a Leela from that time.
That's remarkable. And for those who don't know or may not be familiar with the feet, why the feet of the guru are symbolic and important, could you explain the significance of that?
Well, the guru's form, the guru's feet is him coming down into this 3D dimension. Gurus typically don't descend all the way into this realm. And so the guru's feet are the part of the guru that is most here in this form. I don't know. I mean, I just have an emotional response to the guru's feet. There were several times, and so many Leelas, but there were several times when he was standing very close to me, and all I could do is just try not to throw myself on his feet because they were just, it felt like such a sacrifice for him to be standing there in bodily human form, a sacrifice that he was making for us. He once told us that for him, the experience of being in bodily human form was like he had no skin. He said, I'm so ultra sensitive to this world. I'm so vulnerable that you must take care of this body because I have no defenses. You all have lots of defenses. I don't defend myself against anything. I receive and feel everything. And so I think for me, the Guru's feet, his whole body, but the Guru's feet especially, is his vulnerability, is his saying, I'm here, I'm feeling you all, I'm not defended against anything that you bring me, which really then helps us to feel how much we have to bring him right relationship because he feels all of it. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was watching a darshan video of Adida recently, and Adida is just sitting silently, kind of. He's always radiating his state and his blessing in darshan. He seems to do it in a very concentrated way.
I'm gonna try.
It's kind of magnified. And it was really, there was a Adida is was totally free being. So there's not like you were mentioning earlier in that first celebration, people didn't know whether he was going to come or not. So he doesn't operate on like a schedule. You know, he's totally free, and there's no ability to kind of box him in or contain him. And so it's not like he sits down for a darshan occasion and it's going to be 30 minutes every time. I never saw it in the body, so my experience is just with videos, but there's a wide variety of, sometimes it's a couple minutes, sometimes it's 45 minutes. And I noticed the other day when I was watching this video, at the end of it seems like he's in this like blessing mode. And at a certain point, like it seems to be like he exists because of love and devotion. That's what gives him energy to exist. And maybe at a certain point, it's like the amount of, I don't know, effort or is the right word or not, but that blessing mode is really and requires a lot and is fueled by devotion. Maybe like there was maybe a lap, like a little gap in people's response or something, or he was like just turn his mode, and it felt like a kind of a release or a relief from him to be kind of or a weight off of him for a moment to be out of that really intense blessing phase. Like I could tell like how much concentration there was in that mode for him. And then it was kind of like this release. And Adida feels like a shapeshifter to me. He looks so many different ways and different times, even like over the course of a darshan occasion, his face is so, and his body is so malleable, and he kind of just changed his disposition to go into, his artwork or writing or whatever from that darshan. It was just, I don't know, it was just really telling that he is fueled by love and devotion, and that's what Adida kind of exists on. I'm really curious. I mean, we can talk so much about your life with Adida over the years, but I'm so curious about Adida's Dharma, like you said, was always fundamentally the same. The teaching is always the same, but the written communication was from the Knee of Listening, Method to Siddha, the first versions of those books, to his most recent, the newest communications in the Aletheon, the Dawn Horse Testament. The writing is very different in Adida's phases, and communications about who he is have evolved over the years. And for a lot of people, um, that is really kind of confusing and kind of confrontational, where the language moved to being about I am reality, turn to me. And yeah, that, I mean, if you don't understand or feel or recognize what Adida is, that can come across as like the most like just megalomania, right? And I'd love to know if you had any confusion about that, or if it was just a natural unfolding, or because
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people struggle with when they find out about Adida, and some people were devotees in the early days and couldn't quite grok that.
Um, wow. Um, yeah, I came in 1974. The ashram opened in 1972. Like I said, there were 2 books out. So I kind of feel like I've seen the entire arc of the development of Adidam, and read every single publication that's ever come out. Um, and a couple of different things. One is the purity of the process with him has always been the same. It's always been give me your attention. It's always been self-forgetting guru contemplation. That's it. Um, and the other thing I want to say is we were researchers. We were in a grand experiment with Adida in the early days. He said many occasions, he said, I am going to try everything to show you what does not produce spiritual success. You're not going to just believe me if I say, don't, don't do this, or this, these things won't work. So I'm going to engage in those things with you so that you can see and feel firsthand that that does not relieve the ego of its suffering. And so we did everything. And he also would say, I give you what you want until you start to want what I actually have to give you. And so, so the Dharma in a certain fundamental purity has always been the same, always. But the technicalities have definitely changed. I personally, see, I think it's a matter of 2 things. One is heart recognition. The other is a matter of how we relate to Adida Samraj. He would always tell us as women devotees, I am not your father and I'm not your boyfriend. And he would always talk to us about our Oedipal relationship to him, how we would project our own relationship to ourselves and to our history onto him. And so that we didn't see him for who he really was. We saw him as a reflection of our own struggles. And so some people, and I'm not saying, like, I'm not sure who's going to watch this, so I'm not saying if you don't think Adida Samraj is fully enlightened or an avatar, then you have some emotional problems. That is not at all what I'm saying. But for me, there was this heart recognition, and there was also me projecting a lot of crap onto my guru. And Adida would talk very strongly to us. He would give very strong talks to us about how we were doing these all the things we were doing that was not the practice. And he can be incredibly critical. And I mean, sometimes I had a really hard time with that. It's like, can't you just stop criticizing me for 5 minutes? Can't you just be nice? And one of those loving gurus. And, you know, he used to say dead gurus can't kick ass. Somehow he still does. But, you know, sometimes it'd be like, just give me a friggin' break. One year I was on retreat in Fiji, and he actually kicked me off the island. I had to leave. I mean, that was so hard.
It's kind of
But
mind-boggling, you know, me hearing stories like this of Adidas, how utterly fierce he was and is. And there's this, like, you're talking about the feet of the guru, and there's this
yes,
understanding of there's 2 feet, and one's called the beauty foot, and one's called the power foot. Um,
right,
in some sense, you know, you can compare it to like the mother force and the father force, you know, the nurturing force and the demand. And um,
right.
Adi does. It's like the
But what I wanted to,
yeah, you go ahead, go ahead.
say to finish was two things. One is I was always incredibly grateful for that part of who he was, how he served us, because um, because I am and was committed to spiritual practice, not to having a personal, fulfilling relationship with a man. I wanted spiritual practice, spiritual realization. And that's what he was here to give us. He wasn't here to have a personal, subjective relationship with us. So I'm profoundly grateful for those ass kickings, profoundly grateful. The other thing is, now that he is not in bodily human form, we have, like you just said, you've never seen him in his bodily human form. So now we have the clarity to know the practice is clear and it is available to everyone in all times, in all places, and it doesn't depend on his bodily human form. And so if we had been allowed to um, lessen who he actually was, to make that spiritual, all pervading presence and state smaller and more conventional and molded to our egoic requirements, then now people like you, Max, would feel, oh, I can't really practice the way of the heart because he's not here in his bodily human form. And I don't get to have a personal relationship with him. So I'm so grateful that he kept straightening us out. This is who I am, and this is your true relationship to me, which transcends all that crap, you know. So yeah, he was a difficult man. That was the name of the first film that came out.
Yeah,
Um,
I've never felt any lack not having. Obviously, I wish it would have been amazing to be an Adidas physical company, but I've never felt any lack of, you know, I don't have something in a relationship with Adidas,
good,
the
good,
divine avatar of reality, and that just transmission and is even the demand is very clearly communicated and can be felt, and it's very confrontational. I mean, I was feeling into it recently, had this experience where just like feeling Adidas power and the demand, the confrontation, and the role, the function of the divine guru was like the straightening force. You know, there's the power that is existence. I mean, it's like infinitely powerful, which is really fucking scary too. I mean, it's overwhelming power. And you know, that's like the power foot, and but it's the the opposite side of the same coin is the love bliss. You know, Adidas says he and she is me.
And I
The
want to point out that it's not the opposite side of the coin. They're exactly the
yeah,
same. That fear that we feel, I mean, my relationship to Bhagavan over the years, even though I had a lot of personal contact with him, I had a lot of fear in relationship with him. And there were a lot of gifts that I didn't fully receive because of that fear. But if we can relax through that fear, through turning the faculties of feeling and body and mind through the breath, actually do that practice, that intensity which we are afraid of is literally recognized as the same love bliss. It's us that turns it into something else, right? It's not him. He's never scared, his transmission is always the same thing, but it's us who turns it into, oh my God, this is so intense. It's all the activity of the self-contraction. So
yeah, there's an essay, the way of light is the way of fire. I'm forgetting the name of it, but Arida gave this talk in the 70s, which has been published, and it's in the Aletheon now. It's in Polish and other texts as well. And he says that you basically feel the light as a fire because you still have things to burn up, the resistances and the contraction and all the holds you have on yourself. And in relationship to that, it definitely feels like this fire. It's a fire light. It's very, very tangible. It's not an idea of God in the slightest. It's a really,
oh no. Yeah,
it's
it's the
very
real thing.
tangible. And what's remarkable is I don't think it's ever been communicated, the process of spiritual realization as concretely as Arida has described it in these processes, which he talks about as being like more scientific than any other scientific process in the world, the process of realization, and him actually giving his transmission and body mind being able to receive it, where he comes into the body, and there are like technical things that go on essentially in the body mind, and it's it's remarkable that it's real, and people, while he was alive and now he's not alive, the exact same thing goes on. And I mean, that's so amazing that the practice and that process is so real. There's somewhere else where he says the only liberating discovery is that his transmission is real and can be felt. It's not imaginary at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are we, I have one more Leela. I mean, I have a million.
I know. I mean, we could talk for hours. I know we scheduled in 1 hour, but would love to finish with this last. And by the way, could you explain why we use the word Leela and what that means versus a story?
Well, it's a Hindu word, and it means sacred story. So it's a story not about us, but about the divine play of the guru. And there's actually, hopefully I will do this correctly, there's actually a correct way and an incorrect way to tell a Leela. One is drawing attention to the truth of who the guru is, and the other is drawing attention to ourselves. So a story is about us, a sacred story or a Leela is about the guru. He criticized us a lot for not really telling Leelas, but just drawing attention to ourselves. So I wanted to tell this last Leela though, because it really set the stage for me of knowing how to practice the way of the heart after he dropped the body. So hopefully some people will get something out of it, and hopefully I will tell it correctly. So it was the last time Bhagavan Adida came to the Mountain of Attention, came to the United States, 2005. And we were, it was the end of a day, and he was going to attend a sacred offering, which is a form, people entertain him with music and singing and recitation, and in Landbridge Pavilion. And there were many hundreds of people there, and I was not one of the people that was chosen to go into the pavilion to attend this event. There were many of us who were out at what's called Seventh Gate, which is a holy site in front of his residence. And there was a big screen set up so that we could see the event. And so I was sitting on the grass, and the first thing that occurred to me was, man, I've been left out again. I've not been chosen again. And I was feeling quite sorry for myself. And then it was just like, what are you doing? You have seen Bhagavan Adida hundreds and hundreds of times. This is not about you. It's not about you getting attention. It's about you giving attention to the guru. So stop it and start practicing. And so I did. I just dropped the bullshit. Sorry, I swore, but I dropped the crap and my egoic crap.
You can say bullshit.
Okay. Yeah, I dropped my self-possession and thought I'd rather be happy. I'd rather feel my guru. And so I watched the event on the screen, and I practiced turning the faculties, giving my heart to the divine happiness, turning the body through correct posture and softening and relaxing and into his presence, and turning the mind to simply contemplate his form rather than running through my self-pity and through all this through the breath. And so I was actually practicing what he recommended. And we were told that he was very tired, and he would come out of the pavilion, he'd go straight to his residence, and that the people sitting on the lawn should not expect to see him. I had just happened to sit next to the walkway. I just kind of sat down somewhere. So Bhagavan Adida comes out of the pavilion, and he, instead of taking the path to his residence, he walks through the group of devotees who were sitting on the lawn. And he walked down the path, and he stopped right next to where I was sitting. And he stood there for probably 10 minutes.
Wow.
He just, and again, like I was talking about the guru's feet, I was right next, orange, just magnificence. And his transmission was just overpowering. I could barely keep from swooning. He was just right here. And just, I took everything not to just kiss his feet. And so I just received his blessing and surrendered whole bodily as best I could. And that went on for about 10 minutes. And then, and I had prepared a very special gift for him. And I thought, okay, well, I won't be able to give it to him. That's fine. And then after that, he, instead of going to his residence, he walked up to Seventh Gate, and he sat down in his chair, and he allowed how many hundreds and hundreds of people to go up and offer a gift at his feet. And I was then able to offer my gift at his feet. And the significance of this event for me, I felt like Bhagavan was saying to me, you chose the right thing. This is the practice. When I am not bodily here, that is what you do, and that is how you find me. And I felt like his standing next to me wasn't like a reward. It wasn't like, oh, you did the right thing, so I'll stand next to you. It was like his transmission seemed to be like cementing that practice into my very cells. It was like this psychophysical memory of this is how you find me when I'm not here. And so of all the hundreds of times that I had contact with Adida Samraj over the years, some at his residence, some traveling with him, this is probably the one that's the most important to me, because it's about how I now find him, and how I now choose, instead of egoic self-reference, I choose to give that over and to contemplate his presence and state. And so that is, I'm just so grateful that um, that he that he's kind of shouted at me with his whole body and his whole being, this is how you practice. And yeah, so, and then he left he left the Mountain of Attention shortly thereafter. And then I saw him again. I went on retreat in Fiji in 2007, and I saw him there for several weeks. And then he dropped the body in 2008. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for
You're
sharing
welcome.
that. Yeah, that's a really powerful story. Leela, sorry. Yeah, that's definitely really informative. I've heard numerous stories, Leela's, like that of Adida, like immediately basically responding to someone's devotion and heart response. And that's been my experience with Adida in my relationship with him. It's like this, my response to him is he's like gracing me with the ability to respond. And when I respond, he's immediately there. And it's like no matter what I was doing before, if I wasn't turning to him before and feeling him before, as soon as I am and make that gesture, he is immediately responsive
Yeah.
at the heart.
It is a paradox, because the capability of feeling devotion is his gift.
Yeah.
He lives that through us. It's just, we make this tiny little gesture, and then,
Yeah.
he does so much. Yeah. So,
Oh, Lisa, our time is running out, but I really appreciated speaking with you, and I really I loved hearing about your relationship with Adida. It's always and it enlivens the practice and the relationship for me to hear others communicating, devotees communicating from their hearts about their relationship.
well, it was a privilege and a blessing to do it. So thank you.